Now I will hand over the proverbial gavel to my to Council President Elise Yarnell Holloman for the Newberg Urban Renewal Agency meeting, and Mr. Rux.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see our friend John Bridges here. Hello, Elaine. Calling to order. You have to bear with me. This is my first time doing this. Calling to order Newberg Urban Renewal Agency. Can I get a roll call, Sue?
I'm going to do the roll call.
Thank you.
Counselor McBride,
Here.
Yarnell Holloman,
Here.
Counselor Martinez Placarte,
Here.
Mayor Rogers,
Here.
Counselor Bacon,
Here.
and for the record, there's a vacancy on District 4 and Counselor Finley is absent.
Great, thank you very much. And just a reminder, we have our agenda posted in Spanish on the website. And consent, do we have any consent items, or is that just listed as a regular agenda topic?
There is no consent items this evening.
Thank you. And do we have any public comments?
No public comment tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. And then moving on to new business, 5A, resolution 2022-04, a resolution directing staff to begin the formal public review process of adoption of an urban renewal plan. And I will hand it over to John. Doug.
Me.
It's Doug.
I'll take it from here. So Doug Rux, Community Development Director. So we have with us this evening, John Bridges, who is the chair of our ad hoc committee, and Elaine Howard, who is our consultant, who's spent a lot of time with me in the last year and a half, 2 years. So if we could pull up a PowerPoint. All right. So, Zara, next slide, please. So we're here tonight to talk about the urban renewal plan and the accompanying report. You've seen portions of this presentation before, basically back in the June timeframe as the agency. So your role as the agency in this situation is to review the plan and the accompanying report to determine whether to send it out to formal public review, which includes the consultant confer process, which is required by state statute, requires a planning commission review of the documents for their conformance with the comprehensive plan. We have to go through a city council hearing, and that will require a citywide notice. We call it a super notice. And then finally, there will be a council vote. Next slide. So as always, as a reminder, is that urban renewal is not a new tax. And so what we're going to go through is a little bit of urban renewal 101 review, just because it's been some time since the board members have seen this, and I'm going to turn it over at this point to Elaine.
Thank you, Doug. Next slide, please. We're just going to cover a little bit of the fundamentals of how urban renewal works. So when we all pay our taxes, those taxes go to the assessor's office and are distributed to all of the regular taxing jurisdictions. That includes the city, the county, the school district. Next slide. As property taxes increase, those taxes continue going to the regular taxing jurisdictions. Property taxes in Oregon increase for two reasons. They are allowed to increase by a 3% appreciation every year of the assessed value, the value on which you pay taxes, and if there is new construction or substantial improvements. Next slide, please. When a city forms an urban renewal area, go ahead and transition, hopefully it will work. The taxes from that new area go to the Urban Renewal Agency to pay for projects, programs, and administration within the urban renewal area. That happens only within the urban renewal area itself. So the little round graphic shows that it's just the area of urban renewal. The taxes on the rest of the taxes from the city continue going to all property taxing jurisdictions. Next slide. Taxing districts are the jurisdictions that are impacted by urban renewal. Urban renewal does not provide new money. It diverts funds that would otherwise go to those other property taxing districts. They continue receiving taxes on what's called the frozen base assessed value. That's the value at the time an urban renewal area is established. So all taxing districts continue getting that money. They just forego the taxes off of any increased value within the area. That is called a temporary foregoing of those taxes. That temporary in this case is 30 years. And the reality of urban renewal in most areas is that much of that growth may not have occurred but for urban renewal. That is definitely true within the riverfront area for Newberg, where substantial infrastructure needs to be constructed to be able to facilitate the new development that will cause the value on which the Urban Renewal Agency will receive taxes. Next slide. Urban renewal and local school districts is a little different. Local school districts are funded through the state school fund. They receive their funding on a per pupil allocation. Whether or not you have urban renewal in your community, you will receive the allocation established by the state. If you establish an urban renewal area, it does not diminish that allocation that you receive on a per pupil basis, as that state school fund is then backfilled by other funding sources that the state has access to. Next slide. This just shows again how that state school fund works. So in typical taxing jurisdictions, that urban renewal impact is straight on that regular taxing jurisdiction. Next slide. For schools and the state school fund, you can see that that impact is way up at the top, and that as the school districts are funded, they are funded through statewide property taxes, the state general fund, lottery funds, other local sources. Then it goes to the state school fund and it is equalized across the state so that all school districts have an equal amount of funding. Next slide. I think this goes back to Doug.
Thank you, Elaine. So on this particular slide, we have some different graphics. I always called this setting the stage. We've been at this for a period of time now. So if we step back to basically 2016, we started doing a variety of work and activities to set the foundation for the possibility of having an urban renewal program. Things that have included in this, we did the downtown plan, we did a tourism strategy, we've updated our functional plans for water, wastewater, stormwater, and transportation. We did additional amendments to those documents addressing the riverfront master plan area. We did a community visioning program that was part of this. We've done some updates to our economic development strategy since its inception back in 2016. So that far right-hand column kind of is just the compilation of everything we've done. We're all the way up at the very top of that row where we're looking at the urban renewal plan. The graphic at your top right is the riverfront master plan area. So that dark purple is the industrial. Just to the west of that is the mixed employment, which has a base of industrial. The red areas you see are the mixed commercial, which is commercial and residential. The darker kind of brown yellowish colors are high density residential, and then the yellows are medium density residential areas. And you can see the kind of the transportation network that was identified through that master plan with Winooski on the right, River Street in the center, College Street, and then the future extension of Blaine Street coming down into the riverfront. In the bottom center is the downtown improvement plan and its 10 big ideas, dealing with gateway features, housing along 2nd Street, undergrounding utility lines, connections to the historic neighborhood areas to the north and to the south, transportation road diet along 1st Street and Hancock Street. Then kind of the blues over on the left is the craft industrial area that was identified. And then the graphic that's on your right is one, and it's a little bit difficult to see, but urban renewal is used around the state. So it's not something that's unique and new only to Newberg. We have actually their urban renewal programs in McMinnville, Dundee, and Carlton currently within Yamhill County. But they also exist over on the far east part of the state, the southern part of the state, and up and down the Willamette Valley, as well as along the Columbia River. Next slide. So you may ask, well, why are we doing this again? So we did go through a feasibility study that was accepted by the council. We put together a plan. The agency referred that to the taxing districts. We went through that process, got comments back. I should say we got no comments back on the consult confer process. We did get feedback from the county under the previous iteration of this, where we were including some county lands that were within the urban growth boundary, but outside the city limits. Council provided some direction to me to look at all other opportunities. We had some discussions, and with that, we finished up the annexations of the mill site and ODOT and 5 other properties. There were a few properties who chose not to annex. That set the stage for us essentially to come back and redo the plan, removing any lands that are not annexed into the city limits, but still within the urban growth boundary within the proposed urban renewal area. So the ad hoc committee, they met 8 times in the first iteration. They met 3 times in the second iteration. We listed here just the public engagement work that has occurred since we kicked this off 2 years ago. We've had briefings with Planning Commission and City Council. We've consistently sent all the packets for the ad hoc committee meetings to the taxing districts, to their administrative heads, so that they were aware of what was taking place as we've gone through this particular process. Next slide. So the revision on the left is your graphic. So the committee broke this into sub areas when they were looking at infrastructure, and this plan is focused on infrastructure, transportation, sewer, water, storm, a couple of parking lots in the downtown, and an undergrounding some overhead utility lines. So it's very pure. You use that phrase in its construct for an urban renewal program. So with this revision, it's approximately 540 acres. The maximum indebtedness amount is 125.8 million. Again, covers both the downtown and the riverfront area. It's always important to note is those connections that for the downtown and the riverfront are River Street and Blaine Street. And again, as I always mention, urban renewal does not increase your property taxes. As Elaine indicated, it's redirecting the property taxes that are already paid. And then as she noted that there's the frozen base that all the districts continue to share in. So these are the sub areas. On your left is sub area A. So that's the mill site primary. And so there are improvements for infrastructure in Winooski, Dog Ridge Road, what we're generically calling the Bluff Road down along the river, and then an east-west road through the mill site proper. There's also an esplanade that comes from River Street along the top of the bluff, and it goes over towards the Waterline Bridge. Sub area B is to the west of River Street and south of the bypass. And that area no longer includes the landfill. There are 2 other properties who chose not to annex into the city. And so we shortened up the length of the esplanade on that side. So it stays within the urban renewal district, but it does not go all the way out to the end of the cul-de-sac on Northeast Waterfront Street. There are improvements to River Street, railroad crossing improvements, trail improvements along River Street and along 14th Street, and those actually along River and 14th tie into the Newberg Dundee Bypass Trail. Next slide. So area C is on the left. This one is related to wastewater infrastructure and a new pump station. So thus you see the green lines. And then sub area D is to the north of the bypass up to 9th Street between Blaine and River. This one has improvements for infrastructure to College Street, another rail crossing improvement. As development occurs, we're going to reach the threshold where the Federal Rail Administration is going to say, and ODOT Rail is going to say, you need to put in the traffic signal, gate arms, control boxes, and all of that for both of those crossings. Blaine Street extension from 9th down to College. We've stopped short. There's a property that chose not to annex, and so we can address that through different mechanisms and ways for that last little segment, which is about 600 lineal feet of roadway. And then there are pedestrian improvements along 9th Street, sidewalks and ADA ramps. Next slide. Sub-area E, again, on your left is to the east of River Street, up to 9th. We've took out another property up kind of the northeast corner of this area, but the improvements here are along River Street. You'll see a continual theme because sub-area F is a continuation of improvements to River Street. Next slide. Area G is along Blaine Street. And this one, with the maximum indebtedness amount, we were actually able to add back some projects on the Blaine Street corridor. That area in green is the redevelopment and infill opportunities, because a lot of that area is zoned for R3, which is high density residential housing. And then finally, we have sub area H, which is the downtown area, a little over 100 acres in size. So the yellow kind of halo around it is somewhere in there, a couple of parking lots. The blue lines that you see going north-south, one going east-west, are new water lines. And so for that infill development to occur in the downtown area, one of the big deficiencies we have is our water lines. They're undersized, can't get the fire flow. We have some partial funding towards intersection improvement at College and Hancock. We've got 2 new traffic signals, one at Blaine and Hancock, the other one at First and Blaine Street. And then you'll see kind of some yellow lines going east-west on First and Hancock, and that's the road diet component. We were able to add back in the Hancock piece, which was not in the original version. Then all the way over on your far right-hand side, you'll see the last segment of River Street going south of First Street. And so really looking at River Street improvements to go from First all the way to 14th. Next slide. Mr. Chair, Mr. Bridges, you have any comments you would like to make before I give my recommendation?
Yeah, just one. I think that Doug did Mr. Rux did a good point of pointing out that this is a infrastructure oriented program. And, you know, when we came back and did our last 3 meetings, we were able to add some projects back in. And so we went back to what our priorities were before and used that to be our filter for what we added back in. And so I just want to remind everybody that this infrastructure intent was to build out all the infrastructure so that you could develop industrial land first, because we felt like those were the, you know, living wage jobs. And so the primary focus is industrial land. The next focus is the mixed use. The next is commercial. The next is multifamily housing. And then really the very last item is single family housing. So it's really aimed at trying to get jobs and provide infrastructure so jobs can come into our community pretty much immediately. And so that's how we added back projects with that same priority list. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
That's great. Any questions for Mr. Rux or Bridges? Denise?
I was just wondering how it's going to affect the city's budget, and will there be potential layoffs in the future if we're not keeping up with the number of staff we need?
So our sub-consultant on the project, Tiberius Solutions, has a very robust economic model, very large spreadsheet. And so we've shared that with our finance manager and our city manager pro tem. They've looked at those numbers, looking forward into the future. And you can see Will's giving the thumbs up that we're looking good in regards to that. Because one of the things, Counselor, is that we're also working diligently to get other development to occur within the community outside of this urban renewal district. So you've heard me say for a number of years now is that, you know, for housing and so forth, both single family and multifamily, our future is really in the Springbrook Master Plan. So we've been working diligently the last 3 years on that. And I can say that we'll be bringing things forward, hopefully in the closer future of how those changes will occur. Other things is, you know, Crestview Crossing. Mentioned that a couple of times this evening, in all of the new homes and apartments and commercial that's going in there. So those will all feed directly into the city's general fund to support services and employment for the various departments. So we've looked at this. Presentations we'll be giving to all of the taxing districts will show what those impacts are to each one. I don't have the numbers sitting in front of me right at the moment. But we will share all of that when we give the presentations to the district who choose to want a presentation. It's not a requirement by state statute that they have to have one. Last round, we had a couple who chose not to. They reviewed the information and what that meant to their particular organization and chose to say, nope, we look good. We've talked with our boards and move forward. Counselor, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think Mike has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
So Doug, I might have missed this in your presentation. I apologize if I did, but what percentage of the money of the overall property taxes, are we looking at like a 3% that's going to be shifted to go down to the urban renewal district? Is it 4%? What percentage is it? Do you have any idea?
Elaine? She's looking it up.
I
don't have my
I'm
computer in front
finding
of me.
that in the tables. It is 13.44% of your acreage and 7.22% of your assessed value.
Well, that's of the assessed value that it exists on the current tax rolls.
Correct.
So as you move forward in time, is you take all the property in Newberg would go up 3%. Plus there's new development that gets added to the tax rolls. And in urban renewal within that area boundary is that the assessed value goes up by 3%, and any development within that boundary is the new development, and those dollars go to the urban renewal agency. So it's not an actual kind of one apples to apples comparison, but that's where I was getting to with my response to Councilor Bacon is not only are we paying attention to development within the district boundary and this infrastructure that's needed. And some might say, well, why do you need infrastructure down in the mill? Because there isn't any. There's no water, there's no sewer, there's no storm. It was kind of, a self-contained industrial operation. But we're also looking at these opportunities off of Chehalem, Springbrook properties, some isolated properties off of Springbrook Road and so forth to try to get new development to try to balance that. And that's where the city and the other taxing districts would see those gains or benefits from those new developments and that 3% appreciation that would occur on an annual basis.
So just with a follow-up, Doug. So the 3% that the property taxes can go up, we can take that 3% that's within the urban renewal district part and shift it down there every year.
So so in this 540 acre area, let's say you go year one and nothing happens. There would be a projection of a 3% increase in that assessed value. And those dollars would go to the urban renewal agency. So and I'm going to give you a loose number because again, I don't have the financial model in front of me. That's like, $250,000 the first year, fiscal year ending 2024, roughly, is what would come into the agency. But if we are doing our jobs correctly and we're working with CDC diligently and prudently, is that we get an industrial facility, and I'll just say 100,000 square feet, and that gets built. When that facility comes onto the tax rolls, the taxes that are paid go directly to the urban renewal agency. None of those taxes go to the other taxing districts. So that's where we start to generate the tax increment revenue to be able to go out and to get to a point, what did we say, Lane, about 5 years, 4 years, about 4 years, we have enough revenue coming in that we can go out to the bond market and sell a bond to go out and start to build infrastructure to help support that. Another school of thought and a model is that we can do development. As an agency, you can do development agreements such that you can use private development as basically your funding source, your bank, to build that infrastructure, and the agency pays back that developer. So in essence, you say, oh, you've got this street in frontage improvement and you got this water line. Again, I'm using a hypothetical. If you build that, we'll enter into a development agreement. You front the money to do that and we will pay you back with interest over time. So it's like using a bank, and it's been done. I've used that method on a number of projects before.
Elaine?
Yes, I can give some of those specific numbers that Doug was saying. He didn't have the report. I'm lucky I'm sitting here looking at my computer screen, so I do have that information. The first year of expected revenue is fiscal year in 2024, and that amount of revenue is estimated at $260,000 overall. So that's all of the different taxing jurisdictions. Of that amount, $57,044 would be money that the city of Newberg would otherwise receive if there wasn't an urban renewal area. And again, that doesn't make the amount of money you presently receive go down. It doesn't take away any money. It just allocates money that you might receive in the future off of that increased 3% and increased assessed value. The total amount of impact to we're the agency meeting tonight. Doug and I will come back when you're in city council and talk about this, but the amount of money over the 30-year time period for the city of Newberg is a little over $43 million over that 30-year time frame. But again, that leverages almost $147 million worth of money to use within the district.
Thank you.
Please, if I could.
Yes, sorry, I can't see a yes.
Yeah, sorry. All right, so for Elaine or John or Doug, there was some talk when this went before the county commission about potential impacts on the other taxing districts. I wonder if anybody could elaborate on that, just because, as Doug said at the onset, there were no comments. The only comments were from county commission. So I just wonder if you could talk about that, if there is any impact on other district service levels based on this.
So I'll comment a little bit on that. We asked all of the taxing districts that would be affected to participate in our committee, and almost all of them did. So we had the school district participate, the park district participate, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue participated. And in particular, I'll mention TDF&R because they've got urban renewal districts in many of their other jurisdictions. They provided very valuable insight. And they've, because of their experience in the past, they have a clear policy about how they're going to treat these renewal districts. And I'll tell you that the representative from TVF&R was incredibly complimentary of our program because it's not wasteful, it's driving towards jobs, and it's driving towards greater tax base. I will tell you that the Park District, the school district, TVF&R all voted in favor of all of the votes that we ever took. And I think the community college didn't require us to do a conferral with them because they used the school district as kind of their sounding board. And so, you know, with the exception of the county, all the taxing districts had a seat at the table and participated in a significant way.
Yeah, John, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that first off. And then thank you also to you and your committee members for yeoman's work on this. So thank you. All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
So I think I would conclude that staff's recommendation is to adopt resolution number 2022-04. And that would start the confer consult process, which would commence on Thursday.
Great. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Well, I move resolution 2022-04, resolution directing staff to begin the formal public review process of adoption of the urban renewal plan.
You? Do I have a second?
Second.
Mike with the second. Do we want a roll call vote or does the suffice to not?
You do not need a roll call. So
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes.
I would just like to say thank you to our chair, John Bridges, to Elaine Howard, to Tiberius Solutions, JLA, and DKS, other consultants that have worked with us over the last couple of years on this project. It's really very much appreciated.
And thank you to you, Mr. Rooks.
Thank you, Doug, and the whole ad hoc committee for meeting 3 more times, and it sounds like it's an even better finished product. So thank you to everyone for your time and commitment to this amazing project.
Great, thanks.
I think that's it.
Hey, at least just one other thing, if you could. I think we should introduce Zyra or have Zyra introduce herself as she's the mystery voice behind the curtain.
Zyra.
Hi, everyone.
Say more than
So
that.
I am the admin assistant for the city recorder, and I am trained because she will be absent on the May 2nd council meeting.
Woo. Thank you, Zyra. Welcome.
And we promise we'll be really nice to you.
We will.
I hope so.
We will, I promise.
That's great training though, Sue. Thank you for being here. All right, motion to adjourn. Are we good? Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.